Previously on Film Noir.
So many clips. Hello audience, this is Detective Steve, and if you followed my channel or my Facebook page for a reasonable amount of time, you might have come to realize that I like Star Wars. A lot. I grew up on the first 6 films. I avidly followed the Clone Wars and Rebels cartoons, occasionally read some books, and I feel pretty good about the new Star Wars movies we've been getting. I've reviewed all 3 films in the prequel trilogy, but there's one area of Star Wars controversy I'd still like to cover. The special editions. This refers to re-releases of the original trilogy films in 1997, 2004, and 2011. They came with remastered visuals, audio, and a host of other changes made in George Lucas's attempt to make the films match his original vision of what he wanted them to be. Much like the prequels, the special editions live in a state of infamy. Why? Because some of the changes made were highly questionable. Most notoriously, this one. Less than a second on screen, and yet it spawned a mountain of hatred. I'll refrain from explaining why this particular change was so offensive myself, and instead recommend the fan film, The Trial of Han Solo, which is both informative and entertaining. As for what I'm going to do here today, well, I've already given some measure of defense to the prequel trilogy, so I figured, why not try my hand at doing the same for the alterations made to the original films? This is my list of the top 10 good changes made in the Star Wars special editions. Number 10. A Stormtrooper bumps his head. A New Hope. This scene involves a moment on the Death Star in which one of the Stormtroopers hits his head against the overhanging door.
Take over.
This one gets the bomb spot because honestly, it's the least consequential of them all. It's just the addition of one sound effect. But in the world of famous movie mistakes that made it into the final cuts of their movies, this moment is one of them. Evidently, it was one that got brought up enough to gain some kind of a reputation, because not only was it referenced in Attack of the Clones, but when the 2004 special edition came around, the hiccup was immortalized with the sound effect. Funny enough, in the original version, the sound of the lead Stormtrooper activating his communications device within his helmet is timed so well that it could be mistaken for a head bump sound effect to the untrained ear. That being said, I do think that the proper sound effect is much better. And you've got to admit, it makes the scene a little funnier. This is a good example of the fact that even accidents can add character to a movie. The special edition took this accident and made it into a special moment that was simple, not distracting, and kinda funny. And I see nothing wrong with that. Number 9. James Earl Jones getting a voice credit. The entire trilogy. The story goes that James Earl Jones didn't think he put in enough work to be given an acting credit in the Star Wars films. David Prowse gave the physical performance of Darth Vader that was dubbed over by Jones.
Start tearing this ship apart piece by piece until you find those tapes.
Plans and bring me the passengers. I want them alive.
Who felt that he was just special effects, using Mercedes McCambridge's performance as the voice of the devil in The Exorcist as an example. It's kind of interesting that they went through this thought process, how they had to consider whether a voice actor should get an actor's credit. And I think the answer to that question is yes. Would it be considered acting if an actor did a voice performance for a Disney movie? Of course it would. The only difference with Darth Vader is that the physical performance was there for reference. But honestly, that's no different from dubbing anime into English. And it really boggles my mind today that we occasionally still have to remind people, yeah, voice acting is real acting too. I'm sorry. I got off track. Anyway, for the reasons I just stated, Jones asked not to be credited as Vader's voice. There are 2 reasons I put this entry so low on the list. The first reason, crediting Jones doesn't change much within the films, just awareness of the performer. The second reason is that, technically, this change didn't first happen in the special editions. When Return of the Jedi was first released in 1983, Star Wars had become so big, and Darth Vader so relevant to pop culture, that Jones finally decided to allow credit to be given for his performance as the voice of Darth Vader. Which means this particular change took hold before the final film in the original trilogy was first released. And the release of the special editions carried that change over to episodes 4 and 5. This change may not be a big one, but it pays respect to the iconic voice that brought such a great villain to life and continues to perform as the character today.
Your master has deceived you into believing you can become a Jedi.
So it definitely deserves to be acknowledged. Number 8. Updating the design of the Sarlaac. Return of the Jedi. After Luke Skywalker defeated Jabba the Hutt's Rancor, he, Han Solo, and Chewbacca were
taken to the Dune Sea and cast into the pit of Carkoon, the nesting place of the all-powerful Sarlaac.
In the original version of the movie, the Sarlaac had a singular gaping mouth and some tentacles it could use to grab onto potential prey and pull it to its fate.
In his belly you will find a new definition of pain and suffering, as you are slowly digested over 1,000 years.
Which would be pretty horrible, except for the fact that its prey would probably die of starvation, dehydration, or suffocation first. In the special edition, CGI was used to generate more tentacles and a beak for the creature. I have both positive and negative things to say about this. I'll start with the positive. The Sarlaac is a mostly immobile creature that lives in the middle of the desert, waiting for prey to come along and pulling it in with its tentacles. Adding more tentacles and giving the Sarlaac a beak made it capable of more purposeful movement than in the original version. This makes it feel more alive, and thus more complete as a creature. Now, for the downside. One of the biggest general critiques of the special editions involved the use of CGI that doesn't mesh too well with what was in the original versions of the movies. And alas, some of the CG elements of the Sarlaac do kind of fall into that category. I actually debated a bit about whether or not to put this on the list because of that questionable CGI. Ultimately, I decided that the benefits of creating a complete creature outweighed the iffy visual effects. Also, my list, so my opinions. And my opinion is, I like the choices that were made when redesigning the Sarlaac. It's not a perfectly executed change, but it came with a good update to this creature's design. So it gets the number 8 spot. Number 7. A better view of Cloud City. Empire Strikes Back. In the original film, we were provided with decent coverage of Cloud City, and I think it was given a very distinct look, bearing the image of a polished utopia befitting of the phrase, city in the clouds. However, director Irvin Kershner had some issues about the indoor sets, citing that endless passages of polished white hallways were not very visually appealing. So, when it came time to do the special editions, George Lucas decided to take Kershner's words into account. In doing so, he knocked down a few walls to show us more of Cloud City, which in turn sparked some lighting changes that allowed for more of the orange tint indicative of Cloud City's signature look. I think this change was a pretty good idea because it directly addresses something that the filmmakers thought was missing from the original film. And further, it's purely aesthetic, and it's not intrusive enough of a change to take the viewer out of the experience. For the most part. Much like the Sarlaac's beak and extra tentacles, less than perfect CGI was used to render certain images of Cloud City. But not all of it is bad. Most of them are just background scenery that doesn't have much going on, so it's not like there's very much for them to screw up. Then there's this little sequence. Short though it may be, the rendering of this sequence is of noticeably lesser quality than its other newly rendered counterparts. I debated for a bit about whether to put this or the Sarlaac redesign at number 7, and ultimately it came down to how much the questionable CGI affected the scene. To put it simply, the Sarlaac was more involved in its scene, which puts a bigger spotlight on the CGI used to bring it to life. The cloud car sequence is inferior to other shots added to the special edition, but its only real purpose was to show more of the city, so it's not as big of an offense. It's a change with one instance of iffy CGI, but with good intentions and execution everywhere else. Number 6. Galactic Celebration Ending. Return of the Jedi. The ending of Return of the Jedi originally kept the celebration of this major blow to the Empire on Endor, accompanied by the Ewok tribal song, Yup Nub. In the special edition, we got to see a montage of galaxy-wide celebration before coming back to our heroes. This new footage makes the ending sequence longer, so it also comes with a new composition by John Williams called Victory Celebration. I grew up owning the 1997 version on VHS, so this version of the ending is the one that rings the strongest in my mind. I can understand that Yub Nub might have some sentimental value for older fans. As for me, I think the newer version is better. I may not despise the Ewoks, but they definitely give off a one of these things is not like the others kind of vibe when put next to just about anything else in the original trilogy. Yub Nub only serves to reinforce that feeling. Victory Celebration sets a light and gentle tone using mostly woodwinds, light percussion, and a choir. Yub Nub hit that tone to an extent, but I think the new music complements the scene much better. One reason being, the ending of this film contains Force ghosts. The appearance of Force ghosts is generally intended to be mystical and important, and that notion is much better supported by a musical piece featuring a choir than by one with tribal chanting. As for Hayden Christensen replacing Sebastian Shaw as Anakin Skywalker, well, that didn't happen until the 2004 special edition. In the 1997 version, when Victory Celebration was introduced, Shaw was still Anakin. Further, adding scenes that show citizens of the galaxy in Celebration adds scope and impact to the Rebel victory. As far as people who don't dabble in the expanded universe are concerned, the Empire is defeated, freedom is restored, and the good guys have won. The story structure of the original trilogy is often compared to a 3-act play, with Return of the Jedi being Act 3, and in Act 3, that's when the protagonists usually win, as well as closure and resolution being given to ongoing story arcs. Ending on Endor with the characters we've watched for 3 movies is fine, but showing planets where the Rebel Alliance's fight for freedom had an impact makes the end of the trilogy a more cathartic experience, and the music composed to complement this updated sequence just feels like it invokes the proper emotional tone better than the original did. Hence, I place it at number 6. Number 5. Oola in the Rancor Pit, Return of the Jedi. The special edition version of this scene from Jabba's palace gets a bad rap because members of the Max Rebo band, originally puppets, are replaced with some of the aforementioned bad CGI. As was the original song, replaced by this. Again, I grew up on the 1997 version, so I wasn't even aware of this change for a while. Now that I am, I've actually come to prefer the puppets. But I'm not here to talk about that change, I'm here to talk about a good update that was made to this scene. In the original film, we see a slave girl, a Twi'lek named Oola, dancing for Jabba, resisting his advances, falling into the pit, and that's all. Once she disappears from sight, we only have the sounds we hear a few seconds later to paint a picture of her grisly fate. But in the special edition, new shots are added where Oola is shown landing in the pit. She looks around with uncertainty, a large door starts to open, a look of fear is seen upon her face, and then it cuts away. And another thing, and thank goodness for this, the Rancor is not prematurely revealed when the door opens. As such, the original intent of the scene is preserved. These new shots add a layer of empathy and tension to Oola's off-screen death, while still not explicitly revealing the cause of her demise. Another cool tidbit about this scene is that the actress that played Oola, Femi Taylor, aged very well in the 14 years separating the two versions of the film. So she was brought back to reprise her role for the new scenes, and we were none the wiser. These shots add a new layer to this scene without compromising its original intent, and I think that makes it a pretty great change. Number 4. Showing more of the Wampa, Empire Strikes Back. In the original film, the Wampa ice creature that kidnaps Luke on Hoth was a puppet that didn't have a complete body, meaning that most direct shots of it had to be close-ups. Due to limitations in filmmaking at the time, the movie ended up teasing us with something we'd never see fully realized. Until the special editions, where we get a few shots that show the full body of the creature. Comparing the two versions of this scene, I think the special edition version is more freaky and foreboding. In the special edition, you get to see this thing chowing on the carcass of Luke's Tauntaun, blood and drool dripping from its mouth. In the original, you hear it growl and roar, and then you see glimpses of it as it slowly heads to feast upon Luke. The sense of dread is still there, but I feel more concerned for Luke after seeing this image than after seeing this one. And then when Luke cuts off its arm, no dodgy angles or close-ups. A clear picture of pure agony. Brutal, but effective. On a more technical note, it looks like they used a guy in a monster suit to recreate this creature. Given the questionable quality of some CGI elements in the special editions, I think it's awesome that they went this direction instead. Most of all, it meshes well with the original presentation of the creature. Growing up on the special edition of Empire Strikes Back, it wasn't until a few years ago that I got my hands on the unaltered versions of the original trilogy. Until then, I had no idea that some of these shots weren't in the original film. And now that I do, I know I prefer the updated version. It only took a few extra shots, but the special edition managed to improve the presentation of the Wampa ice creature, and in the process, it made this scene feel complete. Number 3. Ian McDiarmid as Emperor Palpatine, Empire Strikes Back. This change makes a lot of sense. When Return of the Jedi came out, the look, speech patterns, and behavior of the Emperor became iconic. But we first saw this character in Empire Strikes Back, looking and sounding like this.
The Force is strong with him. The son of Skywalker must not become a Jedi.
For those who don't know, this Emperor was created by superimposing chimpanzee eyes over Marjorie Eaton's face, and the resulting image was given the voice of Clive Revel. It was a really weird amalgamation of stuff, but the look wasn't all that bad. It was unique, its weirdness made it somewhat memorable, and the voice had a regal aspect to it. It did seem a bit soft though, considering the Emperor is the one guy with authority over Darth Vader. More importantly though is this. Once Ian McDiarmid slipped into the robes of the Emperor, he fit the part so well. He made it legendary. And that sensation only got stronger when he reprised the role of Palpatine for the prequel trilogy. He got very over the top when he went full Emperor in Episode 3. But it was still unmistakably the Emperor, and we loved it. So it makes sense that during production of Episode 3, Ian McDiarmid performed the Emperor's scene from Empire Strikes Back.
The Force is strong with him. The son of Skywalker must not become a Jedi.
Putting him there just feels natural. Though at first I thought it was a bit weird that they changed some of the dialogue.
I have no doubt this boy is the offspring of Anakin Skywalker.
But then again, Darkseid users seem to have a thing for identity separation.
I've accepted the truth that you were once Anakin Skywalker, my father.
That name no longer has any meaning for me.
Your son, he's gone. He was weak and foolish like his father. So I destroyed him.
Anakin Skywalker was weak. I destroyed him.
I do wish that McDiarmid's makeup and wardrobe matched his Return of the Jedi appearance more closely than it did, but that's getting into nitpick territory. Giving Ian McDiarmid another opportunity to appear as the Emperor is all the excuse I need to put this change at number 3.
He would be a great asset. Can it be done?
He will join us or die, Master.
Number 2. Technical fixes. The entire trilogy. In an ideal world, many Star Wars fans would have no special editions. And I understand that argument. Greedo shooting first changes the motivations behind Han's character, Luke screaming as he falls makes the act of choosing death less powerful, Darth Vader going "No" sounds stupid, Jabba's CG from A New Hope is terrible, the movie was groundbreaking and amazing for its time and it should be respected for that. Stop messing with a good thing, just keep it as it was. However, I think it's far from unreasonable for a filmmaker to go back and fix the purely technical errors of the film. They want it to look and sound its absolute best before they release it on the latest high-def picture, ultra surround sound, super duper eye-popping, mind-melting media of the future. As a video maker, I can confidently tell you, errors, even minor ones, drive us nuts. We don't want them to be noticed, especially not when HD clarity makes it so much easier for them to be noticed. To be totally clear for a second, I'm not talking about when a special effects shot that looks dated is replaced with a new one. I'm speaking of color correction, adding or removing sound elements to improve the soundscape of a scene, music cues that make scene transitions sound smoother, things like that. When I was remastering some of my old content for re-release on YouTube, you bet I took the opportunity to correct some of those mistakes when I had the chance. And then deleted the original versions, which I can't get back because I permanently altered the original project files. To be fair, I did keep it technical. I did not change anything to Greedo shot first levels of bad. Anyway, we're talking about Star Wars here, not me. Imagine, if you will, a world in which the most drastic changes, even the ones I just said I liked, did not take place. Instead, with the dawn of each new video format, we get a re-release of the original trilogy, where every coloring error, every time a crew member appears in the shot, every audio hiccup, every other purely technical nitpick, is slowly corrected over time. The average moviegoer probably won't notice the corrections made, and the ones that do will likely go, oh hey, they fixed that. Over the course of 3 movies, a lot of technical errors can pile up, and as far as I'm concerned, correcting them is a win-win for both artists and audience. And that is why technical corrections get the number 2 spot on this list. Number 1. Luke and Biggs reunite. A New Hope. During preparations for the assault on the Death Star, Luke gets an unexpected surprise. His best friend from Tatooine, Biggs Darklighter, is a pilot for the rebellion.
Hey, Luke! Biggs! I don't believe it! Hey! How are you? Great. How'd you get here? Hey, you coming up with us? I'll be right up there with you.
In my experience, a lot of people are usually happy that this was changed in the special edition, because Biggs isn't in the original film that much. There's actually another much longer scene involving Biggs that would have been at the beginning of the film, but let's focus on this one. In the original version, Biggs is mentioned by Luke a few times.
Oh, Biggs is right. I'm never gonna get out of here.
It's only one more season.
Yeah, that's what she said when Biggs and Tank left.
Where are you going?
Looks like I'm going nowhere.
And he's present during the battle scenes, where some allusions are made to the fact that he and Luke have history together.
Luke, at that speed, will you be able to pull out in time?
Be just like Beggar's Canyon back home.
But unless the audience was paying close attention to that, they probably didn't remember the name of Luke's twice-mentioned friend well enough to realize that he appeared in the film's climax without resorting to an in-depth character guide or trivia book. And as a kid, that's exactly how I learned who Biggs was by name. So I'm grateful for this scene because of its contribution to that backstory. It's concise, but it's effective. It gives the audience an impression of the friendship between these two.
I told you I'd make it someday.
It'll be like old times, Luke. They'll never stop us.
And supplies more support for Luke's piloting skills.
Luke is the best bush pilot in the Outer Rim territories.
It also establishes a greater sense of camaraderie when the two Tatooine boys head into battle together, giving greater weight to the moment that Biggs is shot down by Darth Vader.
Wait! Wait!
And I just realized that this makes Darth Vader responsible for the death of Luke's mentor and his best friend. On the same day, no less. Putting this scene back into A New Hope gives a little extra screen time to an established character, doesn't interrupt the flow of the movie, and that extra presence allows more emotional engagement with that character. Were it not for the hectic nature of the original film's production, I can imagine that this scene would have been included in the original cut. But hey, better late than never. This is a change that restores a scene that should have been in the original version of the film, and the ripple effect it has on the climax improves the film as a whole. As far as I'm concerned with special edition changes, I don't see how I can make this scene any number but number 1. Before I close out this video, I have a few more things I'd like to say about the special editions. Star Wars fans will be familiar with the quote, "Films are never released, they escape." There's always some unfinished business, some minor mistake that needs fixing, or something that couldn't be done with the movie due to time constraints. Personally, I think there's merit in wanting to improve a film, or trying new things with it. For instance, a fan who goes by the moniker Addywan did a fan-edited version of Episode 4 called Star Wars Revisited. Not only does he polish the existing imagery and address lots of minor technical details, but he also makes a few dramatic adjustments. And some of them, I absolutely love. This conversation between Obi-Wan and Luke is edited together in a different order. Nothing is cut, but in this new order, each thing they discuss transitions smoothly into the next topic, all the while maintaining smooth continuity.
You fought in the Clone Wars?
Yes. I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father.
No, my father didn't fight in the wars. He was a navigator on a spice freighter.
That's what your uncle told you.
And to top it off, he fixes the awkward jump cut when Luke first activates his father's lightsaber. In the Vader vs. Kenobi lightsaber duel, the saber effects are improved, it's edited to make the fighting seem much less awkward than in the original film, Vader's lines are rearranged in a different order that does a better job at escalating the dramatic tension.
You should not have come back. Your powers are weak, old man.
And Battle of Heroes, the composition from the Anakin Obi-Wan fight in Episode 3, is used during this duel, tying it back to the prequel trilogy and the history of these two characters. My point here is that wanting to improve a film, even a film that was very groundbreaking for its time, is not a sin against art or movie making. I'm glad that the special editions exist for the legitimately good improvements that were made, because of the comedic opportunities it spawned, and because it inspired Star Wars Revisited. But here's where I draw the line, and I think this is where most of the fan base takes issue. Movies are a product of their time. Even the imperfections, mistakes, and flaws of a movie can have sentimental value to its fans. Whatever changes are made, good or bad, the original version should always be preserved at the highest level of quality possible. That way, we can honor where we began, and the special editions can represent how far we've come. Will Disney and 20th Century Fox work together to encourage that preservation? Will we ever see high-quality commercial releases of the pre-special edition versions of the original trilogy films? Doing so would mean tons of money and fan appreciation for both companies, so I don't see why not, but time will tell. This is Detective Steve, and may the Force be with you.